both publicly, because that was one of the few areas left that we had to express views, but also to work with the public sector, the public servants, the people within the departments who had the responsibility to provide advice and to make sure that they had all the necessary information in the development of that advice. So the political discussion between government and ourselves was quite limited, and in fact it got very nasty over a period of time, where the Prime Minister of the day banned any of his ministers talking to, was it CAI then or ACCI? I can't remember which one it was. And indeed it was Laurie Burke, I think the Minister for Industrial Relations at that time, I think Reg, that had the courage to actually break that ban and come and start to talk to us. Because he knew from his trade union background, I think, that there are three parties in the economic environment within the country, and there has to be a way in getting those three parties to talk together, to work together, and even if they can't agree together, at least have an avenue for conversation so that there is a better understanding of what those views were. It was very interesting. I'm glad they're behind us, and if it comes up again, I wish you luck.
Thanks, man. He inspires me. And to Mark, I mentioned in my remarks the resurrection, essentially, of the public policy debate about the goods and services tax in Australia moving to a broadly-based consumption tax, and your instrumental role in that. Do you want to reflect on how you went about that and what sort of coalition you pulled together to make it happen?
Thanks, Pete. Two observations. One, we held the tax summit in 1996, which was important in terms of the government going to the 98 election committing not to do something, which is what it had done in 1996, which we wanted to reverse. When Graham and I first spoke about the hosting of the tax summit, I suggested we do it in conjunction with the BCA. And interestingly, the BCA at the time declined to participate because they said it was too risky. And they subsequently came on board in relation to fundamental tax reform. But it was interesting that in 1996, after the election of the coalition government, the BCA didn't have the courage at the time to join with us in hosting the tax summit. It was Graham's idea to bring in ACCI. It's just died. It was Graham's idea to bring in ACCI. And we hosted the summit on a long weekend in 1996. And from that time forward, we said to the government, this is not something for you to play yet. We needed to get a community view, both from the welfare side and from the business side, on the need for fundamental tax reform and the general direction for fundamental tax reform before we tried to get the government to buy into it and commit to it. And I think that the summit held in 1996 was without question the start of that. And by 1998 we had Prime Minister Howard go to the election proposing the introduction of fundamental tax reform. And by and large the business community stuck through that process. The business tax reforms that were supposed to be a component piece of it that followed on from the GST reforms, we were not able to deliver on that, because the vested interests in particular sectors of the business community came to the fore, and they talked about fundamental reform but didn't actually walk the talk when it came to needing to do it. And I suppose if we reflect on history, there is sometimes a gap between what employer organisations say and what their members do. I had the opportunity to speak at a BCA meeting a little while ago, and I made that very point. I said the challenge that you, the BCA, have as an organisation is you say one thing and your members do another. And I think the challenge has always been the disconnect between the aspiration for good public policy and the vested interests that particular businesses will want to pursue in their own right. Now the BCA members, it becomes more obvious because they're larger in size and sometimes in stature in terms of their representations to government. But I think that, Peter, you continue to face the challenge of both making sure there's policy coherence and making sure that you've got people standing behind you when you look around. Those cameras are in front of you and you're thinking, you know, we're united on this thing, and you just hope to God that when you turn around, there's at least one person standing behind you. And Ian mentioned Laurie Brereton. It's interesting, Laurie Brereton walked into the lounge in Sydney this afternoon, and there were things going on the television at the time when he walked into the lounge, and he refused to look at the television.
Well, thanks very much, Mark, and I'm definitely conscious of those around me. Immediate left. But before I do call on Richard, I'm going to ask Ian Spicer to come to the podium and just say a final word on behalf of all our former secretaries, directors general and chief executives, those here, those past, and those who are no longer with us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my colleagues and for the, if I can say, absent friends, and particularly to some whom I know I've spoken to in the last day or so, would have wished to have been able to celebrate this event with us. So it really is a great opportunity, a great chance to get together and to reminisce a little of old times and to think of what was and what might have been. But at this stage, it's my task, I think, simply to thank you very much for the hospitality which you and ACCI has provided us this evening. It's been a pleasure to be together again. Also, I thank you for the honour that you've given us in recognising the contribution that those of us who have made to ACCI and its predecessor organisations. I guess that everybody values the recognition of any personal contribution, and it's even more or especially delightful when that recognition is from your peers. And I look on that as what is occurring this evening. However, I believe that, and I'm sure for all of those to be recognised tonight, the real satisfaction for us all this evening is to see ACCI as a respected and forceful advocate for its members and an organisation contributing to the growth and strength of the nation. Whatever we do, it's what is now in place that I think certainly gives me, and I'm sure my colleagues, great pride. And I know that on these occasions, and maybe this is an occasion which is directed to certain people within the organisation, that you shouldn't single out any particular people for comment and recognition. But I would like to single out two that I feel just need to be recognised a little more for the work that they did in bringing the organisations together. Don Markin, particularly, in working with me in that transition process, the openness, the enthusiasm, the commitment he had to develop an organisation that was viable and respected and had a structure which would take it forward into the future. So, Don, from my point of view, working with you over that period was exceptionally valuable. But I'd also like to recognise this evening John Clark, who as president of ACCI, and as you've indicated, was the first, or the inaugural of CAI, and was the inaugural president of ACCI. Now, it was very much John's calm, dedicated commitment to establishing an organisation that could represent the business community, that gave confidence to the members to come together and create what is the most representative business organisation in this country. And the challenges of coming together were not insignificant. There were those